Trapped in Austin podcast, episode 37. I had the pleasure of interviewing the lovely and talented Griffon Ramsey. Some of you may know Griffon as a prominent and well-known chainsaw artist, but if you ever looked at her Wikipedia page, it is hard to sum this woman up and limit her to just that. She's kind of been emerging around the entertainment industry for a while and is definitely a multifaceted individual. So she's had her hands in a lot of different avenues and mediums, and it was definitely a pleasure to talk with her. Unfortunately, some of the audio got scratched. I think there may have been some cell phone connectivity issues on her end. I'm sure some of you have gathered at this point that I do all of these interviews via cell phone and remote. And unfortunately, sometimes that just goes along with the territory. Some of the audio does not always come out great. So some of the interview got chopped, but you still get a bulk of it and get to learn a little bit about her. And so thank you again to Griffon for doing the show. Appreciate it very much. And I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Trapped in Austin podcast. I appreciate you doing the show, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. I was reading through your Austin Monthly article earlier today. Congratulations on that, by the way. I feel like that was a pretty good look for you, promo wise. So yeah, congratulations on that. I learned a lot about you a little bit through that article.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I also didn't realize you had a Wikipedia page. That was pretty interesting. So you're from Oregon. You grew up there. When did you move to Central Texas? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I moved to Texas it was January 1st, 2002. And I lived in Austin for about a month while I was looking for a place in San Marcos, and then moved down to San Marcos until fall of 2004 when I moved back to Austin. And I've been in Austin ever since.
Okay. Yeah, so you've definitely gotten to see the evolution of the city, so to speak, into what it's turned into today.
Well, yeah, and I think the thing about Austin and history, it's generally in the state of transition. And so pretty much since I've moved here, it's been transitioning, and it's still transitioning now. I mean, we're in the middle of it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. There's definitely a paradigm shift going on here, and it's just at such a rapid pace. It's really hard to comprehend sometimes. I'm born and raised here myself, and you and I are pretty close in age. So I actually went to Texas State also.
Oh, really?
So yeah, we definitely have that in common. But it just blows my mind. I mean, even from for me, I wanted to say I started to notice the shift probably in about 2014 is when I really started. It just seemed like there was this influx of people, and it's obviously just grown at a rapid pace ever since then. But that was probably when I really started to notice it. I live in North Austin now, but I was living in South Austin at the time, and it was just I don't know, man. You could just tell by. It didn't matter what time of day it was. It was I lived right off 35. So the traffic was just insane all the time. And I was grateful to get kind of back up to the north side because I kind of grew up here. So this is a little bit more my safe haven, so to speak. I feel like things aren't as compact. There's a little bit more spread out, which I can kind of appreciate. But yeah, it's crazy just watching how much the city has changed.
Yeah, well, I almost didn't make it to this podcast because I was stuck in traffic on I-35. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you gracing us. Yeah. So how did you you've been doing this for what, about maybe, I don't know, how many years you've been doing this now? A little over 10?
Yeah, so I've been chainsaw carving wood for over 10 years. I guess it depends on when you ask me what I do or what I'm doing and how long I've been doing it. My business, or I guess my general operation of what I fill my time with and how I manage to pay bills is kind of a variety of things. And it started more on the media side. I went to Texas State. I have a degree in technical theater, so kind of a focus on directing and design. And so at the beginning, I went into theater, mostly through set design, though a mix of things. And then that led to doing some film work. And then that led to doing online digital media, online content with Rooster Teeth, which is a pretty big company in the Austin area doing media projects. And so I
Yeah.
was working with them at very, very early in there, in this sort of the start, near the start, not the very beginning, but near the beginning. I wrote a webcomic for 5 years called Rooster Teeth, Rooster Teeth Comics. And then we published 5 graphic novels, one for every year. I did the Rooster Teeth podcast, and then a few of their web series like Immersion, RT Shorts. Anyway, so I was kind of working in that world of online content and growing online community. And so when I left Rooster Teeth, I was trying to figure out where to send my followers that I kind of accumulated, who were interested in the work I was doing for them. And at the time, they were really pushing everyone who was working at the company to sort of concentrate our online time on the community website, which was centered around Rooster Teeth Productions. And so when I left, I kind of needed to like find a place that was more universal to send everyone. And so I launched a YouTube channel. And I was really just trying to create a fun, exciting YouTube channel doing similar things that I was doing for them, which was making like pop culture, gaming culture, props and things like, and I planned on using different materials, it's sort of like with theater, like you kind of make something out of anything you can find. I was planning on doing the same thing. But then the first video I made was chainsaw carving, because I'd always wanted to try it since I saw it when I was a kid on the Oregon coast. It's sort of a tourist thing, like about 45 minutes from where I grew up in Oregon. So I'd kind of seen it around and I'd been curious about it for a long time. And it was sort of the moment where I wanted to like take a big stand and do a big thing and create some drama and like draw some eyeballs to my YouTube channel that I was starting. But I didn't expect to like totally fall in love with chainsaw carving and have that totally take me in a different direction, different life path altogether. And then that has led to other opportunities for carving. Like you mentioned, the Awesome Monthly, that was around pumpkin carving. And then recently I just worked on a big group project, carving an ice church in the high Tatras Mountains in Slovakia. And that was
Super
like
cool.
a 40-foot structure made entirely out of ice. And then in the near future, I'm planning to do some snow carving. I'm trying a new medium when it comes to subtractive sculpture. Well, I guess it's also additive. So just sculpture. I like to try different things.
Yeah, no, that's super impressive actually. I mean, what is the like preferred title like that you like when someone kind of, I mean, do you like chainsaw artists? Like what is the nomenclature that you kind of prefer when someone discusses you or talks to you?
Oh, well, that's a good question because I'm sort of rebranding now since I'm incorporating some new things that I'm doing into the fold of all of my sort of online presence, content, or I don't know, which is like personality. I don't know what you call it. So what I
Yeah.
have right now is what in my branding, like I have it on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere, is international chainsaw artist, homesteader, futurist, and libertine, exploring the possibilities of life while making friends around the world. And so right now that's kind of encompassing the directions I'm going in, which is maybe a little bit weird, but I'm having trouble. I'm sure, like, I see this, a lot of my friends who have multiple interests kind of go through this, like, how do you describe what you do in a way that doesn't sound totally insane, but also, gives you some flexibility.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it definitely seemed like you wore many hats. So that's why I was curious kind of what you sort of preferred, because chainsaw artist just seemed like a limiting title in a way,
Absolutely.
considering all the things you've done. So that's why I was kind of curious what you kind of like, or if there was even a way to even put it into words at this point.
Well, the thing that I've been finding is like the chainsaw is so gimmicky, right? So that has actually really cut through the noise as far as getting some attention with it. And I've been amazed at the opportunities it's provided me with when it comes to travel and working with, really big brands like on influencer marketing things, doing videos and that kind of thing and finding sponsors. It's been kind of amazing just because it's so niche. And I'm still very attached to it. Like, honestly, I've found some other revenue streams that are bringing decent money in, and I should be focusing on them, but I can't get over carving. Like, it's just fun. And
Yeah.
so I wouldn't want to let go of chainsaw artist. But the problem, you're right. If I just put that, the only people who think they can work with me are people who need like stumps carved in their yard. And I'm really
Hmm.
trying to gear myself more toward the, when I put homes, I mentioned homesteading. I bought some property in upstate New York, and the goal is to create an art music venue, a hosting space where I can do my events, which will probably be geared toward chainsaw carving still, but also be able to host my friends and other, creatives, and or just people trying to get away from the city and try to find something, I don't know, find some inspiration out in the wilderness. So I'm going to be doing a mix of things, and I think the brand is going to continue to shift. And honestly, it may not even, some of the projects I have going forward may not even be all about me, and I may not even need to, try to tweak them or push them into my brand. It could be just collaborations I do with other people and I'm actually really looking forward to that, because for the last 10 years, my business has been my name and has been me, and everything has to do with me. And I'm kind of, ready to go hang out with other people and do some things that can be bigger than what I have going on and aren't all about me, and aren't so personal in that sense.
I think that's kind of the strange dichotomy with Austin right now is that yeah, there's just so much money coming here, and they're tearing down old buildings and building these really tall ones, and rent's getting really high, and it just, my fear is that it's going to drown out the fine arts long term, and I just really hope that there is some push for sustainability there, and have some of these corporations maybe help finance some of these people in some aspect to where they can still do these creative ventures. Or you see it with the music scene, like it already feel like it kind of started there, and now it's starting to trickle, I think, into other mediums of art. So I hope that yeah, I hope something's done about that.
Well, and I think the thing that I think the thing will help, the thing that helps, like I said, I found a lot of possibilities in the way of getting sponsored by companies. Like, I've worked with different companies who have sponsored me or just hired me for gigs to create something, and usually I'm given some creative leeway. Create something that aligns with one of their campaigns. And so if you are already on the lookout for companies that you might want to work with, or if you're an artist or a creative, or you're doing something in the way that you could use more support, you can go and just propose things to these
Hmm.
companies. You don't have to wait around to be discovered, and you don't have to wait around to like have somebody approach you, because that may not happen. If you take the bull by the horns, you can kind of, if you explore, if you find out, ask around and find out what some of the companies are doing when it comes to their campaigns. Just do a little search, see what their taglines are, see what their sort of perspectives are, what their mission statement is. If you find an area where you do have that in common with them, with your business, or your work in some way aligns with it, you can make a case, write a proposal, a one sheet or whatever, and approach their marketing team. Usually ask them for, like, if anyone is doing, influencer marketing, if you have some followers, and if you don't have followers, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess that's something I do take for granted after working in the online space and creating an online community. That get the eyeballs of the people that follow and support me have really helped me leverage that attention into some of these relationships, and hopefully in a way that's mutually beneficial and is still transparent to everyone. That's why, like I said, it's good sometimes to just go after the companies that you think you could work with, and be ones that you already believe in the sense that like their product, or that they're legitimate.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually really solid advice too for any like younger entrepreneurs is you can't always wait for opportunity to come to you. And I think that's really the distinguishing line between some people who I think end up making it and living out their dream, so to speak, and people who don't, is that a lot of people are just afraid to ask. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like you can't be afraid to just, you know, propose something to somebody and have a conversation. If they're not into it, you have to be willing to take that and go on to the next thing. But yeah, a lot of people are just scared. You see that a lot with folks is they just don't, they care too much maybe what other people think to really put their idea to paper and execute.
I have I hear what you're saying, and that may be true for some people. But in my experience, at least with the creatives I know that are trying to be business people, or people that I know who have are driving their own ship, I find sometimes it's more an issue of like kind of sometimes arrogance, like the work should speak for itself. Someone should come to me and help me. Like, I feel like there's a little bit of arrogance in it. And I think that maybe you're right about fear, but I do think you have to be a little bit shameless. I think the concern sometimes people have is they don't want to come across douchey. They don't want to self promote. They don't want to drive their thing forward because they're worried that people might think of them as being full of themselves or whatever. But until you know, like you're the one who's going to believe the most in what you are doing. And you have to prove to them by your own belief that it's something that should be believed in. And so I think you can I would err on the side of more confidence versus less when it comes to pitching what you're doing and talking about what you're doing to people. And you can't always expect the work to speak for itself, not because it's bad work, but because there's so much noise out there. And
Absolutely.
if you're going to compete, and there are middle people out there and agents and managers and things like that. But in my experience so far, and I think I've accomplished some things. Like, I've gotten to a level at this point in my career where I feel like I can speak to this. I don't think these middle people really do anything for you or even approach you or even like make them. You already don't really need them.
I can see that for sure.
At least in my work. Maybe it's different for like, musical artists or whatever.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I have to ask you this: how often do you get the Texas Chainsaw Massacre jokes? If you had $1 for every time you heard one, you'd probably be multi billionaire. I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, no, I get it all the time for sure. And I'm kind of debating right now. Well, never mind. I can't really talk about that. I'm sorry.
So where does that rank on your all-time favorite movies? I saw that you're a horror movie fan. I'm as well, huge fan. So where does Texas Chainsaw Massacre rank on like your all-time favorite horror movies?
Well, I don't want to be rude when I say it doesn't rank anywhere near the top of my list because for me, I love horror, but I love supernatural horror, and I'm really into ghost stories. And so
Gotcha.
unless it's like interesting and psychological, like Split or something like that, I'm
Uh-huh.
not really into the real world. I'm a lot more into the paranormal. So as far as I'm not super excited about anything slasher. I'd much rather, if I'm going to do that, be going down the path of true crime.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I do think that's interesting though, because I'm sure a lot of people ask you about that movie or make jokes about it. So I think that's
Well, I enjoyed it. I watched it, and it's always good to watch a movie that's referenced all the time. And it's so funny. I grew up in the country, in a little ghost town, and we got one channel when the weather was good. And so a lot of times I did not understand the pop culture references my peers were making in school, and that was actually a barrier as far as connecting with them. And so now, as I've gotten older, I really do try to take as many opportunities that I see to, if I see something, or like if there's a book or if there's a movie or something that I've heard about a million times or has been referenced a million times, that it's usually beneficial to watch it or experience it. So then at least at least at that point in your life, you're like, okay, I finally get it. Okay, I get what people are talking about. You know, I don't tend to regret those experiences. And I liked Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's not the kind of movie I would normally ever go after. I know that might disappoint people as a chainsaw carver, that I'm not obsessed with cutting people with
the
chainsaws.
irony. Yeah,
Maybe if it comes to, if there's a point in my life where I have to murder some people, I might take more of an interest. But at this
there you
point,
go.
I managed things fairly peacefully.
No, totally fair. So as an artist, what inspires you? What do you pull inspiration from? I always like to ask people that. I'm a musician myself, so what do you ever just where do you pull your inspiration from?
Well, I have a process that sort of started from my theater background. So when it comes to just like producing art and working or making anything, I have a process I follow that usually begins with a feeling, which then goes into searching for imagery and putting research together. I don't usually freestyle unless I'm just having a moment, and that's usually very emotionally motivated.
Hmm.
But for the most part, I tend to plan. And so I start with imagery. But when it comes to what inspires me to make art, even in the first place, I would say it has always been connecting with people. I grew up, like I said, in the country, and I grew up fairly isolated, or at least when I was young, I was very isolated. And when I started taking the bus into school to middle school, which is further into town, in Philomath, Oregon, and there were more kids to connect because I didn't really have the skills at that point, I think I found my place with my peers when I started making art and they started noticing and they started asking me for help on their projects. So like,
Mm.
somebody would make a report and they would need like some visuals. So I'd make some visuals for them, or somebody would write a comic and I'd do the artwork for them. And so that's when I started finding my place among people, is being able to use my skills in a way that got me, I guess, the in on those groups. And so I don't think that has really changed as far as what motivates me. I love that I can make a living with it, and that for me, it keeps me from having a 9 to 5. And I'm so easily bored that for me, I like doing project-based work, and I love being a freelancer, and I love picking my priorities and being able to overlap things and leave town whenever I need to, for the most part, except for my daughter.
Yeah.
That's great. Freedom. So I would say connection with people, freedom. Now with chainsaw carving, global travel, being an international, and in general, I think for the rest of my life, I want everything I do to have some sort of international focus, whether that is, going to these places and doing this work and experiencing other cultures, or if it's making things happen here and bringing people in from all over the world.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really cool. What's next on the horizon for you? You got any cool projects in the pipeline that you can speak about, or
Yeah, well, I'll give you a little bit of, I can't talk too much about it because we're building a quote for it and it may not go through, but there's an opportunity to build something that may make it in the Guinness Book of World Records. So that's the thing I'm focusing on in the next month or so, trying to see if we can get this project and get it off the ground.
Very
But
cool.
Otherwise, the thing I mentioned already, I would like to host, and I would be the MC because I would not be competing in this, but I would like to host a world-class chainsaw carving competition in Austin, Texas. And I'd like to have more than the competition would be the main event. And I would be bringing in international superstars from around the world. But there would also, I think, be a festival attached to it, which is sort of like vendors with artistic, creative people around Austin, ideally with a focus on extreme live art. So you come to this show, there's music, there's food trucks, there's crazy chainsaw carving happening, but there's also lots of little booths to shop at and buy handmade items and hopefully be able to watch get made right in front of you.
No, that sounds really cool. Well, I wanted to ask you this earlier, like in regards to chainsaw artistry. I mean, is there, obviously this is super niche, like you referenced earlier. I mean, how many, if you had to guess, I mean, are there a lot of you in like totality in the world, or I mean, how many, if you had to guess, are there that are actually have some notoriety and recognized?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, what does that mean, notoriety? And as I've been connecting more with the international community of chainsaw carvers through Facebook, Facebook is sort of where they're all concentrated. There's some of them have made it to Instagram, but a lot of them are not most tech savvy people. So Facebook is like still kind of where the bulk of the community is. And in that process, you know how Facebook says, okay, you've got friends with these people. Here's some other people you might know. I've been just getting endless suggestions of carvers everywhere, and it's never ending. And I think it's growing as an art form. These saws, these tools are getting lighter. Anyone can use them. They've been marketed more and more toward the homeowner, not lumberjacks. And so they're like lightweight, they're high powered, efficient machines, and now women can use them, anyone can use them. And so it's not just lumberjacks and people that are finding this art form now, especially with some of the modifications that have happened through the chainsaw carving world, where we have modified tools and made creative products like the carving bar, which now is being made by these bigger manufacturers, and so it's available to get these modifications. People from the art world are jumping in, finding out that the chainsaw is the perfect tool for sculpting. And so it's not just lumberjacks who've decided, oh, I have a little skill, I can make a bear or an eagle or whatever. It's like people with degrees in sculpture now using chainsaws. And so I think one thing I love about it, there's so many ways. It's a very commercial art form too, because we can move so quickly. It's actually a viable art form to make money because you don't have to spend a lot of time and you can make some pretty amazing work in a short amount of time. So you can actually do this and make a living doing it. It's not easy. I'm not going to say that like anyone can do this, because I think that a lot of people wouldn't want to put what it takes into it, but there's a lot of different ways to make money at it. And for me, I've definitely focused more on the performance art aspect of this. And for me, it helps me too to have an audience because I find it energizes me, and I also have to finish things on time. When I'm kind of left to my own devices, it takes me a long time and I get distracted easily. But if I show up at a live show and I know I have 6 hours to finish something, I'm going to finish it, especially if people are watching.
Yeah, no, I was just about to ask you, like, I don't know a lot about the competitions, obviously, but when you go, they just kind of give you an allotted amount of time. And do they pick the design for you? Or are you kind of able to use your own discretion and make what you want?
There's a million different ways to do an event. And as I've been doing events for the last decade around the world, I've been collecting ideas for the event I'm hosting in Austin, Texas. And I think what I'm going to make is going to have aspects of all of my favorite events in the world. There's some things I'm stealing from an event in Japan. There's things I'm stealing from an event in Germany and one in Scotland. Like, I've got all these I'm going to make a collage of, and hopefully have the best event ever. But it's not always competitions. Sometimes it's symposiums where it's more of like a big, lovey art fest collaboration thing. You still have a deadline. You still have a massive amount of work to get done in a short amount of time, but you're doing it as collaborators, not as competitors. Sometimes you'll have an event that's more like a gathering, and it's meant for people to create work, sell work, and throw things into an auction and draw a crowd and have sales, And then sometimes it's a combination of all of these things. And so there's a lot of ways to do it. And there's a lot of ways to make money with this. Like I said, it can be performance art, doing demonstrations. It can be production where you get really good at making a few things really, really quickly that you love to make, and you sell them to the people who want to buy them. And you pick what you want to make based on what's going to sell. Oh, to answer your question, as far as for the competitions, you're usually expected to design something. And sometimes you'll be given a theme. Like if you carve up on the coast somewhere, often there'll be like a nautical theme. But a lot of them are also fairly freestyle. But when it comes to the speed carving, so sometimes they'll be doing a big masterpiece thing where you have to carve something usually around 6 feet tall, and you've got a few days to do it. You'll be expected every day to take breaks to do like a 1 hour or a half an hour, or sometimes like a 2 hour like quick carve where you have to create something really, really that I was born. But I don't care. I just feel like doing what I really why I want to host the thing in Austin, because this place here, Austin, Texas, I'm hoping that not only will I bring these amazing, like Michelangelo level artists that work done, but in a matter of hours, like in front of people's eyes, like really ridiculous out there that should be world famous, but no one's ever heard of them. I want to bring them to Austin because I have expectations that people here will appreciate the wilder and weirder things that some of these artists want to. Is having to always do things that are selling to the masses. I hope that here there are enough people that are interested in interesting things, that these artists can really cut loose and show their inner world.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I'm definitely looking forward to see what's coming down, because I've been following you on Instagram for a while, and your stuff is super cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing what unfolds. But yeah, no, I appreciate you doing the show, Griffon. It was good having you on. Thank you again for your time.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I appreciate you taking an interest.
Trapped